had been sick for a long time, and his doctor told him that he was fine, that he had diverticulitis, and gave him antibiotics and Gatorade because his blood pressure was low. But his blood pressure was low because he was bleeding internally, but his doctor kept saying, "Your wife is hysterical, don't listen to her, you're fine, you don't need to go in the hospital." So I left town and told him I would come back because he was a tough negotiator, until he went into the hospital. And I met him in the emergency room. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he died 6 weeks later. But it's always a short time, because I never understood, excuse me, until Artie died, why when people were terminally ill, people said they were surprised that they died. It's always because you don't expect them to die that day, even if they're 68 pounds and they used to be 250 pounds. You still don't expect them to die that moment. Well, first of all, I was surprised. I knew that the doctor had a lot of problems, and I knew there was something terrifically wrong with my husband. But I thought once I got him into the hospital, because he was a tough guy, that they would give him something and fix him up. And Artie and I agreed that I would hear the news first and then come tell him. So in the hospital lobby, the doctor told me that the cancer had started in his lungs and progressed to every part of his body, and I made a joke. I said, that sounds like the news anchor Peter Jennings, who said he was going away to fight lung cancer and was dead in about 3 months. And I expected the doctor to say, don't exaggerate, everything is fine, and he didn't say anything. And that silence was the death knell. So I said, how long does he have? And he said, a month or more, we can't tell. And I said, what should I tell people who want to come see him from out of town? And the doctor said, tell them to come immediately. So, like, I would go to the hospital, I would visit him from early morning till about 4. I would make sure other people would be there so I could have a break. And then I did go home at night. If I had known he only had 6 weeks, I probably would have spent more time with him. But I would go home at night, and I redecorated the house so that the living room was full of everything that he loved. So paintings, funny things like rubber ducks with hearts on them, little Post-it notes that he would write, pictures of friends. The living room was I wanted everywhere that he looked, something would either make him smile or he would see colors. And I found a big ceramic pill that said, fuck it all, FUKIDOL, 10,000 milligrams. And so that was one of the things I used. So that was the decorating until he got to come home, and then he spent between two or 3 weeks at home before he actually died. We had hospice, which works very well, at-home hospice care, because the hospice nurse then helps you with the death, but also does all the phone calls. So you don't have to call 911, you don't have to do anything like that, you don't have to think. So it took about 3 or 4 hours before the men from the Neptune Society who cremate people came. So I got to spend time with him, because when he died, he was gone, but I loved his body too. I still love his body, and I had time to say goodbye to that. I just read about this stuff. I had a caregiver left with me, his friends had left, and but there's nothing in my culture or background, so we did wash him off. And it's true about a dead weight. We tried to get him into a nice shirt because he liked to be dressed nicely, and we couldn't do it because he was too heavy and there was no resistance. So here's my sense of humor. I put him in a t-shirt that said I do all my own stunts. And I put his arm around me like he was hugging me, and I cried and talked to him. And when the men from the Neptune Society knocked on the door, I stopped them and I said, I know he's dead. I'm not delusional, but please don't call him the deceased or the remains. He's my husband, he has a name, please call him Artie. And they put him on a gurney and in a bag, and it's just, there's this sense of unreality because, I said, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to go with you, but that would be really stupid because you're dead. But here is this man that I have loved and still love, and I would never see him again. So it's not even a hearse, it's like a van. So he went off into the night and was cremated. So we did a big celebration of his life. I didn't want to do a funeral. And we did it, my husband was a recovering alcoholic and ran a meeting in a church. So we took a room in the church and brought down the sofa on which he always sat to lead his meeting. And I brought in a big, beautiful rug and put chairs and hired trees. So there was food, there was a section where there were his t-shirts, because he had a lot of Yankees t-shirts, those went first, and New York t-shirts. So I would look up and people would be wearing one of his shirts. And there was a section with his books, so people could take a book that he loved to read. And the people that developed photographs, and Carmel loved me because there were photographs of him all over the place, and Post-it notes so people could write messages to. And Michael talked second, and then anybody that wanted to could stand up and say whatever they wanted. And people cried and laughed, and yes, my daughter was there. Some of his children were there. A lot of friends, a lot of people in the community, a lot of AA people. And they talked about how much they loved him, sometimes how much they were grateful to him for saving their life from what they taught him about sobriety, and also what a pain in the ass he was. He was one of those complicated, difficult, wonderful things. One of Artie's best friends, Jim, used to call him a rhinestone in the rough. I think he was, in a way, deliberately unpolished. He had a very big, charismatic personality that covered fear and shame. And even though he had been sober for 47 years when he died, he never felt like a person without alcohol. He missed whiskey every day. I know that because I asked him, because it seemed to me after a certain time that you would forget about it. He had horrible childhood, which would take me a long time. Poverty, abuse. His mother died giving birth to him. And so he started drinking very early and was very bright and handsome, and alcohol was his best friend. So when he got sober, that was sort of the center of who he was. He said even if he had failed in other things, that he had always been available to alcoholics and addicts because he leased cars, he had been married before. I used to do his ex-wives as like a memory test. Could I remember all of them? Although he always said that I was his first real marriage, that he didn't know what marriage and love was until he met me. We went together 10 years before we got married because he was scared. He partly didn't want to give up, to be honest, being a player, but also he didn't want to fail again. He didn't want to hurt me. But when we got married, even though we fought and we were different people, I always say it was an imperfect marriage, but it was a perfect love. We were on some kind of strange journey together where we really taught each other something every day. So that was that, I love you, but you're a pain in the ass, because he would do stuff that other people wouldn't do. And sometimes it was amazing. For example, we were in Las Vegas and he was gambling, and he called the pit boss over and he said, I just want you to know that you're acting like an arrogant cocksucker and there's no reason for you to do that. And I turned white. I was like really embarrassed. And later on we were walking through the casino and the pit boss came up to him and said, thank you, I really needed to hear that today. So that was part of his success when he sponsored people in AA, was that AA has said that you could break your anonymity after you're dead. I did ask them because I wasn't sure. Or break somebody else's anonymity. Was that he could sort of hone in on who you were and what made you tick. And if you were reachable, he could reach you. Sometimes he couldn't. So that was Artie. Well, that was it. He had many. But his heart and soul was AA. He was an agent in Hollywood for a while. He leased cars. He, when he was drinking, he would do whatever he needed to do. Because I asked him when he was such a bad drunk that he was homeless, and I asked him if he ever looked at other people and wondered why they had a home to go to, and he didn't. And he said, no, I just wondered where I'd get the money for my next drink. So even though AA wasn't a paid job, because he always thought that should be for free and for fun and with love, he would never take money for it. He wouldn't take a job as an alcoholism counselor. That was the heart and soul of what he did.
You had?
He has 5 children, and I have a daughter, but not together. When we got married, I'm trying to remember how old I was. I think I was 46 and he was already 60-something. I don't think we would have been happy raising a child together because we had different systems for everything. So, well, it's changed. When he first died, he was older than I was, so I assumed I would miss him and I'd be sad and go on with my life. I didn't know I'd feel totally annihilated and that I had no identity anymore. I used to always say we died by mistake instead of he died and have to correct it. Most important support system for me is always listening. But when he first died, I couldn't talk about him. I mean, if this was a month or 2 months after he died, I'd be crying hysterically, just to say that he wasn't there anymore. It was kind of funny, actually, because in this dying process, there was a soap opera where a character's husband was presumed dead, and she was a very feisty character, so I actually got some lines. It's like, what do you need? You can't give me what I need. I think that's the hardest thing for other people is I want my husband back. So I would say I'm okay with not being okay. And after 3 weeks, a very sweet, loving woman said still, which to me was insane. It was insane to me at that point to say, how are you? My husband just died. How do you think I am? So to this day, it's listening, accepting, and then if you can, a way of moving on. My best friends, for example, 2 people told me the 5th year is the hardest, which was nice to know because I'm in the 5th year and I'm having some of the old stuck places coming back. And to be with a friend who will say, tell me about the day he died, because it's the anniversary of his death, and really be willing to sit and listen to me for an hour and not say, well, aren't you over it by now? You have other children, you have all, that's not helpful. That's what I'm finding is that most people are afraid to talk about people they love who have died because people will shut them down. Elizabeth Edwards has a great quote about saying, you can't, when my child has died, I haven't forgotten about them. I think about them all the time. I'm grateful if you mention their name. So don't stop talking and don't think that I've stopped thinking. I do also want to say, that people react to grief differently. I've had people say that they feel like they're heartless because they seem to move on much more quickly. I don't think they're heartless. I think people have different patterns. But my experience and the people that read what I write are people that after 11 years, 20 years, 30 years, they live a full life and they're really happy. I think of public people like Betty White or the Queen Mother who don't find another love. So it's okay if you do, if you remarry, or if you have 6 children and 1 child has died and you have a lot of fun with the other children. If you have a pet that's died and you have other pets, what people need to understand is there's still that space that belongs to the person that died. I have a choice to allow it to make my life dark and sad and bleak and lonely, or I can remember him. He was alive for a lot longer than he's been dead. I can remember him being living. I can remember the twinkle in his eye and his smile. I can hear his voice, and I can use that to inspire me. I can use that to see colors more brightly. that's what I mean by when I talk about transforming grief, is you don't forget, you don't say, oh, well, I'm over it now. You say, wow, how lucky am I to be able to grieve, because how lucky am I to have a love like that. I took the wedding rings off and for a while, and I put them back on again. I'm very ambivalent about that. If somebody walked into my life, I wouldn't say no. I'm not looking for it. It's something that I question myself about, because I'm choosing a certain kind of loneliness. But I also know people that have remarried. I have somebody dear to me who's actually thinking about getting a divorce. I don't want to marry somebody or date somebody and all the time I'm with him be thinking about my husband. So it has to be somebody that I really care about. And you can't see around corners. So I'm not dating, but I'm not going to also say I'm never going to date. I just, at the moment, there was a great quote by Jess Walters that I put on my Facebook page that makes me laugh, and it's something like, what kind of a wife would be if I left my husband simply because he was dead? And so there's that side, and then the other side says, I'm still alive, why not have a partner, why not have somebody to come home to, why not have, all that joy of sharing. I do have a lot of wonderful friends too, so that's, but it's different to have like a really good woman friend that you're traveling with or doing something with than coming home to that special person that looks at you in that special way. So that's a big question mark for me.
Right.
I said I want to remember him the way he is. I remember the times he hurt me, the times I hurt him. You think that somehow now I'm better. I'm certainly accomplishing a lot. I'm certainly having a lot of happy moments. But if you don't get the part that I wake up every morning and say, I can't believe I can't roll over and have my husband hold me, and that there's a sadness to that, then you don't know who I am. I'm sitting talking to a stranger. So that's why I say that acknowledgement. And it doesn't have to listen all day, especially like if, let's say you're my accountant and I've gone to see you. If you acknowledge the pain, actually my accountant's father died. And when I went to see him, I took that time to say, this is a really tough time for you, whatever you're feeling is normal. And then we didn't spend the whole time talking about that his father had died, but he knew that I didn't expect him to be the same as he was last year, because something really big had happened in his life that wasn't going to change. Oh, that's something else. The thing about you should be over it now is that grief is exhausting. I have missed Artie now for over 4 years, and that's part of it. When I talk to my friends that have missed somebody for 10 years or 30 years, is that it's like, oh, when water wears away a stone, it changes it. It can change it for the better. It can polish a rock and make it beautiful. But there's still that daily thing that where you wake up and you go, I can be with this person. If you believe in life after death, because I like to call death shape-shifting, but I'm in a physical body. I don't have another physical body to be with. I do, but not him. So it's just that simple acknowledgement that you know me, that we're laughing and having a good time, and that underneath there's another layer, and that you accept it. And if I have an Artie story, you're not wondering why I'm still thinking of Artie stories, because there aren't new stories, but there are a couple of new stories if you think that people talk to you after they're dead, but that's a whole different subject. But there's lots of old ones. So when you're saying, well, my husband and I had a really good time when we did this, chances are I'll say, yeah, can you believe when Artie, it's just normal. And it's the same thing for everybody, it's, if somebody's child dies, please talk to them about their child. And they're thinking about that child all the time. They're imagining what that child would be like. And if your kid is having a wedding or a bar mitzvah, or even like a birthday party, say to the person, do you mind if I talk about that? I know how hard it is that your child isn't around to do those things anymore. It's that's a sensitivity. And what I say to people now, because it is different people like different things, I just say, whatever you wish that I would say, pretend I just said it. Because I really can't know what that person wants to hear. but I make a space for them to admit to me whatever they're feeling, which is why I hear from TSA agents and customs people and people in grocery stores something really personal, because I make that space for them to talk about something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Your grief is very new. Somebody said to me, whose husband died and that her only child died, it gentles down. Whatever you're feeling is normal. You're not crazy. But the questions that you'll start to ask yourself, even if it's not today, because if you're watching this, that means you're a searcher and you're looking for ways to be in the world, is, yes, I am a grieving person. I will always be a grieving person. But what else am I? Who else am I? Show up for things. Even now, I often don't want to do things, but I show up because once I'm there, I can have a really good time. I put myself places where life is happening so that life can seep back into me. And I've also found that helping other people is a good way to get my head out of my own stuff. My husband used to say, if you live in your head, you live in a very bad neighborhood. So you need to get out in the world and find the things for you that will be part of the new you. People have the phrase, the new normal. You don't have to say there's something wrong with me because I'm not getting less pain right now. All you have to do is say, I'm in a lot of pain, welcome. Now what else can I do? Who else can I talk to? Where can I go? I love theater. I went to theater after my husband died, and I slept through probably 4 or 5 plays. One of them, if people hadn't applauded at the end, I'd probably still be sleeping. Then one day I went to see Carrie Fisher, and she was very funny, and I stayed awake for the whole play. And now I love theater. So you have to keep doing that, and you have to be gentle with yourself. The other thing, I guess, is when you're having the most trouble, if there's somebody that loved you very much, don't look at yourself with your eyes. Look at yourself with their eyes and think about what they would say to you right now. And you can also, this is it's a technique, but you can, and they use it actually with people that have post-traumatic stress syndrome. They use it with soldiers, is you roll your memories backwards to before the event occurred. And you have to actually go there. It's not being psychotic or crazy. And you could set a time, 10 minutes, and you really rest in that comfort and that love, because that still exists. I really believe that love triumphs over death every time. So give yourself sips of that wonderful, delicious thing that was this love in the time that you spent together, and then bring those good feelings forward into the present, and give the way, you'll see like a desert and there'll be a flower growing. You'll see a cracked concrete city sidewalk and a flower comes through. Stuff can bubble up. It may already have bubbled up, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. Sometimes things bubble up that are joyous and you don't notice them. You just have to say, I had a good day yesterday and I forgot to pay attention to it. So keep searching and keep looking and keep listening, and know that you're not alone, that no matter what you're going through, no matter what you did, like I went to a bereavement group, I hadn't changed his sheets for 3 months after Artie died, and I thought that was kind of crazy, and this woman hadn't changed the sheets for a year after her husband died. That's a small example. But whatever you're feeling, there are a lot of other people that are feeling it, and I can't promise you that you're going to wake up one morning and feel like you're the exact same person that you were before this happened. But I can say that there's a trajectory, there's an arc, there's a way to create meaning for yourself again. And there could be lots of fun times on that journey, even though right now it may not seem that way. Or if right now it does seem that way, that you're just really happy with the person that you loved and the soulmate and you're already moving on, hurrah, I think that's good. whatever path in my mind, whatever path you choose is the right path for you. It's just if you get too stuck, then get help, because you want to make the best of the time that you have left on earth, because you're not only living for yourself, you're living for the person that is wherever they are and doesn't have a body anymore.